Rod the Bod. Rod the Bod. Good morning, Rodney Boyd. How are you?
Good morning, Jamie Allman. Good morning. I'm very well. Very well. How are you today?
I'm fine. Hang on a second here. Let me figure this out here. I did something with the phones. You there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me, sir?
Good morning, Rod the Bod. How are you? Yes.
So good to be heard by you this morning.
Well, you know what? Good to have you hear me.
You know, Jamie.
Hey.
Yes, sir.
What? I wanted to ask you about this tort reform thing.
Yes.
All right, because Kevin McDermott did a really good story in the Post-Dispatch, and I think most people believe that, yeah, okay, you could possibly sell me on this idea that tort reform is necessary. So then we got these three Republicans all of a sudden, Gary Romine, who's a state senator, and he is putting forth a bill that wants it to make it harder to sue businesses for racial discrimination. And it just so happens he's been sued, and because he has this rent-to-own store, right? Then you have this guy who is, what is his name? Senator Dan Brown. He's from Rolla. He's a veterinary medicine. He's a veterinarian for more than 40 years. So he wants to place a 2-year statute of limitation on malpractice or negligence for, guess who, veterinarians. Then we have our buddy Ron Richard, who's a good guy, and I happen to think this is probably a little bit of a stretch, where he's wanting to put new limits on the use of the consumer protection law regarding class action suits, right?
Right.
And it just so happens that David Humphreys, who I know, he's a great guy, he's the CEO of TAMCO, is a campaign contributor and also facing this class action lawsuit for allegedly defective roofing shingles. But I have his roofing shingles, and mine are awesome, so whatever. Anyway, Richard still is fronting this bill, and the problem is, though, it's one thing, if you're going to get people involved and behind tort reform, great. But these probably are not the guys who ought to be leading the fight, especially since they completely individually benefit from it. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, Jamie, but you got two sides to this coin. What you're going to hear is tort reform is an amalgamation of about 15 different things. So you've talked about three. The list goes on. There are bills, the Daubert standard, which means nothing to most of your listeners, is a bill that says that experts in this state have to comply with a federal standard. There are people who think that is a simple no-brainer, but there's a lot of opposition to it. There are provisions that deal with collateral source. What happens if you get hurt, you collect from person A? Should you be impeded to collect the same amount from person B?
Right.
Joint and several liability. I mean, the list goes on. And so you are going to find that each of the people you mentioned have a constituency, because think about this, whether it's Gary or Doc Brown or Ron, someone else also is in their industry that came to them. So they may have had a personal experience, but it's not unique to them. So I get what you're saying, that, hey, the bill, somebody else should handle it or it shouldn't benefit them. But, you know, Gary's not the only person with a rent-to-own.
Right,
Dr.
right.
Brown's not the only vet. TAMCO's not the only company. So, yeah, these guys may be moving this issue, but in large part, even if it benefits them, they will be able to tell you that there are other people that are affected by these policies. And when you have a part-time citizen legislature, unlike the D.C. beast, which is where they're full-time, you're going to have some confluence of people saying these issues affect my industry or people like me, and they advance the bills.
Yeah, see, that's a good defense of these guys, because I could present that defense too, that this is actually the way it should work, because you have citizen lawmakers, and they're always going to come out of a small business or whatever happens they do, and so of course they're going to have situations that require some action, and isn't that the way to go? Because you have this is the ultimate representation. Let's put it that way.
I think you're right. I think that the counter ought to be, if you have an argument against the policy, attack the policy in the Capitol and not the person that brought it. There are people that are going to come up and testify against these bills, but hopefully they'll get to why they're bad policy,
right,
not why certain people brought them forward. And it's just the distinction that sometimes is lost on people when you look at a Jeff City part-time citizen legislature versus what happens in Washington, D.C., where people are full-time, that's all they do.
Right. Yeah. Now, but here's the other thing, though. And again, I never want to judge something on the basis of what the media is going to say about it, but it still does have, there's still a level of optics here that sometimes might be better put aside. So let's say, for instance, Senator Romine or Senator Brown wants something. Couldn't they have somebody else put it forward just to avoid that claim of conflict? You know what I'm saying?
Once again, Jamie, they could, but that cuts both ways. If they go behind the scenes and push somebody else, is that any cleaner hands than if they say, hey, this is an issue that affects a business and industry I'm in, I want to bring it forward. All these hearings are heard in the public. People can come testify for and against. Some people say err on the side of transparency. Put yourself out there and let the folks decide whether or not you're on the right side or wrong side of the issue.
Right.
And that's probably, to me, a better approach than going behind and getting someone else to do something to do your work for you. Then you get into the question of, is there enough transparency, and why didn't you come out if it's so right or wrong? So I just think people ought to go into the building, see these hearings, hey, raise the issues like you're raising, have the conversation, and you know, kudos to the folks for being willing to put themselves out there, because all these bills have hearings in committee, people can testify. These folks are a lot more accessible to people if they have the concerns you have than someone that's off, 600 miles away in D.C. Gary's easy to find, Doc Brown's easy to find, Ron Richard is easy to find there in Jefferson City every single day. So if people do have the concerns, I don't think it will be difficult to get to these guys to get an answer or get their perspective on why they're doing what they're doing. And in fact, all the bills will be presented and people can testify for or against or for informational purposes.
Rod the Bod is right again. Yes! You just nailed it down. Congratulations. You have survived the spanking machine, as always. Rod the Bod at Rodney Boyd, host of Insider Talk, Sundays from 12 to 1. Thank you and congratulations. Please stay on hold for what you have won, Rodney Boyd. Thank you so much.
All right.